There is a specific kind of silence that haunts a man's phone when he thinks he's finally cracked the code of a woman's heart. It's a silence that carries a peculiar weight, heavy with the phantom traces of yesterday's warmth. One day, you are the center of her orbit, sharing secrets that feel like sacred geometry. And the next, she is a ghost in a machine, offering monosyllabic replies and an emotional distance that feels like a physical wall. Most men encounter this shift and immediately descend into a spiral of self-doubt or defensive anger. They assume she's found someone else, that she was never interested to begin with, or that she's playing a manipulative game designed to gain leverage. But I'm here to tell you that these assumptions are not only often wrong, they are the very things that guarantee the connection's demise. When a woman pulls back, it doesn't always signify the death of interest. Frequently, it is the birth of an overwhelming investment. She isn't retreating because you don't matter. She is retreating because you have begun to matter too much. This is the psychological paradox of the emotional pullback, a phenomenon rooted in fear, vulnerability, and the terrifying realization that her happiness is now partially in your hands. To understand this, you must first accept that for many women, emotional safety is a harder currency to earn than physical attraction. Attraction is easy. It's a chemical spark that requires little risk. But attachment is a high-stakes gamble. When a woman realizes she is genuinely attached to you, her internal security system doesn't lower its guard. It goes into a state of high alert. She begins to see the potential for loss where she previously only saw the potential for joy. She starts to calculate the cost of a broken heart before the relationship has even fully blossomed. This retreat is a form of emotional regulation, a way for her to step back from the ledge of her own feelings to see if she can still find her balance. It is a desperate attempt to regain control over a heart that feels like it's beating out of her chest. The problem is that men usually read this fear as disinterest. They panic. And in their panic, they either chase her with an intensity that feels like an interrogation, or they shut down out of pride, confirming her deepest fear that she was foolish to care in the first place. This script is designed to bridge that gap. I'm going to walk you through 7 hidden signs that a woman is pulling away, not because she's done with you, but because she's afraid of how much she wants you. This isn't about tactics or tricks. It's about understanding the internal conflict of a woman who is trying to protect herself from the very thing she desires most. If you want to move from confusion to clarity, you have to be willing to look past the surface level of her behavior and see the vulnerability underneath. The first sign is that she gets quiet immediately after a moment of intense emotional closeness. This is often referred to as a vulnerability hangover. Imagine a night where the conversation flowed effortlessly, where she told you things she hasn't even told her closest friends, or where the physical intimacy felt more like a soul-level connection than a casual encounter. In the moment, she was fully present, but the next morning, the reality of that exposure hits her like a physical blow. She has crossed an emotional threshold that she cannot uncross. She has given you the keys to her internal fortress, and that makes her feel incredibly naked. In response, she goes quiet. She isn't regretting the moment. She is processing the risk of it. She is waiting to see how you handle the power she just gave you. If you become overbearing, you confirm her fear that opening up leads to a loss of autonomy. If you become distant, you confirm her fear that her truth wasn't enough to keep you. This silence is a cocoon where she tries to rebuild her sense of self before she leans back in. It is not a red flag. It is a sign that what happened between you was significant enough to disrupt her equilibrium. A woman who doesn't care doesn't need to process anything. She can stay casual and communicative because nothing real was exchanged. But the woman who cares deeply is the one who needs the most space to breathe after the air gets thin with intimacy. The second sign is that she starts overthinking everything you say, even the most mundane comments. When a woman is not invested, your words carry no weight. You can forget a date, make a clumsy joke, or take hours to reply, and she won't blink. But once she is emotionally hooked, your opinion becomes the primary lens through which she views herself in the relationship. She isn't being dramatic. She is being hyper-vigilant. Her mind begins to scan every interaction for signs of impending rejection. She's asking herself questions she will never utter. Did he sound bored when I called? Does that 3-dot pause mean he's reconsidering us? Is his brief text a sign that I'm becoming a burden? This mental loop is a byproduct of high investment. She is trying to decode the future by analyzing the present in micro details. This overthinking often manifests as her pulling back because she's editing herself. She stops being the spontaneous version of herself and starts being a curated version, afraid that one wrong move will shatter the fragile connection she's come to value. It's a tragic irony. She cares so much about the relationship that her fear of losing it makes her act in ways that jeopardize its natural flow. If you notice her becoming hesitant or overly cautious with her words, don't mistake it for a lack of personality. It is a sign that your approval has become so important that she is terrified of losing it. The third sign is one that many men miss entirely. She tries to act low maintenance all of a sudden. You might notice her saying things like, "Oh, it's fine, we don't have to do anything special," or "I'm not the type of person who needs a lot of attention." On the surface, this looks like she's becoming easier to be with, but internally, it's a defense mechanism. She is trying to shrink her needs so they don't scare you away. She has likely been told, or has internalized the idea, that being too much is the fastest way to lose a man. So when she realizes she has deep feelings, she tries to become invisible in her requirements. She avoids asking for reassurance, she stops initiating plans, and she minimizes her feelings because she doesn't want to appear needy. She is essentially trying to be a version of herself that is impossible to reject because she's asking for nothing. But this creates a deep internal resentment and a feeling of being unseen. She pulls back emotionally because it's easier to be distant than to be needy and get rejected. If a woman who was previously expressive suddenly becomes a martyr of low expectations, she is likely terrified that her real needs will be a burden you aren't willing to carry. She is testing to see if you will notice her silence and step into it without being asked. The fourth sign is a classic. She pulls back exactly when things start feeling real. Relationships have milestones. The first time you say, "I love you," the first time you talk about the future, the first time you meet the family. For most, these are celebratory moments, but for a woman with a fear of vulnerability, they are sirens. Each milestone represents a point of no return. Once things are real, they can be lost. A casual fling can't break your heart, but a real relationship can destroy your world. So, at the very moment when you feel you are reaching a new level of commitment, she might suddenly become busy, distracted, or emotionally cool. It's an instinctive retreat to the shallow end of the pool, because the deep end is getting too crowded with emotions she can't control. She is trying to slow down the momentum because the speed of the connection is making her dizzy. This is the stage where men often make the mistake of pushing for labels or forced clarity. They want to lock her down because they feel her slipping away. But that pressure only confirms her fear that she is losing her freedom to a situation that might eventually hurt her. What she needs in this moment is not a contract, but a consistent, non-anxious presence. She needs to know that the realness of the relationship isn't a trap, but a safe harbor. The fifth sign is that she tests distance instead of asking for reassurance. This is perhaps the most confusing behavior for men to navigate. Instead of coming to you and saying, "I'm feeling a bit insecure, can you tell me where we stand?" she will create a gap. She will stop texting first, she will stop being the one to suggest plans, and she will wait. She is throwing a line out into the dark to see if you will pull it back. She wants to know if you are with her because it's convenient or because you actually want her there. If she creates distance and you simply let her go, you have confirmed her fear that she is replaceable. If you chase her with frantic energy, you confirm her fear that you are unstable. The middle ground, showing steady, calm interest without being prompted, is the only thing that calms this specific fear. She is looking for proof of your investment that isn't a reaction to her demands. A woman who doesn't care doesn't test. She just leaves. But a woman who is testing distance is a woman who is desperately hoping you'll notice her absence and prove that she matters. It's a silent plea for you to be the leader of the emotional connection for a moment, so she can rest. The sixth sign is that she hides her vulnerability behind logic. When you try to talk about the distance, she might give you a list of very practical reasons why she's been away. She's busy at work, her family needs her, she's focusing on her fitness, or she just needs some me time. While these things may be true, they are often used as a shield to avoid the real conversation. "I'm scared of how much I like you." Logic is safe. Logic has boundaries. Emotions are messy and unpredictable. By framing her retreat as a matter of scheduling or logistics, she avoids the raw exposure of admitting she's overwhelmed by her feelings. You might find her becoming almost clinical in her descriptions of the relationship, talking about compatibility and timing rather than passion and connection. This is her way of trying to intellectualize her way out of a heart-centered problem. She is trying to use her brain to protect her heart from a risk it's already taken. If you argue with her logic, you will lose, because her logic is a fortress. Instead, you have to speak to the feeling underneath the logic. You have to acknowledge the fear without making her feel foolish for having it. The seventh sign is the most profound. She pulls away because you matter more than you think. This is the hardest one for most men to wrap their heads around. We are taught that if we matter to someone, they will move toward us. But in the world of high-stakes emotional investment, moving towards someone is an act of surrender. If she realizes that your mood affects her mood, that your opinion can make or break her day, and that your absence leaves a genuine hole in her life, that realization is terrifying. She may pull away as a way to prove to herself that she is still independent, that she doesn't need you. It's a preemptive strike against the possibility of being abandoned. If she leaves first, or if she creates enough distance so that she doesn't feel the impact of you leaving, she wins the battle of self-protection. This is why some women sabotage perfectly good relationships just as they are reaching their peak. It's not that they don't love you, it's that they love you so much it feels like a threat to their survival. This is the moment where your responsibility as a man comes into play. You are not responsible for fixing her past or healing her wounds, but you are responsible for the energy you bring into her space. If you respond to her fear with your own fear, you create a cycle of instability that will eventually collapse. If you react with games, if you try to make her jealous to get her attention, or if you use silence as a weapon, you are essentially telling her that her fear was correct. You are proving that caring about you is a liability. But if you can remain steady, if you can be the man who doesn't move when the wind blows, you provide the one thing she needs to stop running: emotional safety. Emotional safety is not about being a pushover or a nice guy. It's about being a grounded man who is so secure in himself that he doesn't need her constant validation to stay present. It's about being able to see her retreat and say, "I see you need some space. I'm right here when you're ready." And then actually being there, without resentment or punishment. This kind of emotional leadership is rare, and it is the only thing that can dissolve the fear of a woman who is over-invested. You have to stop interpreting her hesitation as a lack of value for you, and start seeing it as a high valuation of the risk she is taking. When you change your perspective, your behavior changes. You stop chasing and start inviting. You stop demanding and start providing. You move from a place of, "What am I getting from her?" to, "What kind of man am I being in this connection?" This shift is where true growth happens. It requires you to set aside your ego and look at the situation with empathy and authority. You are the captain of the ship. If the passenger is scared of the storm, you don't jump overboard or scream at the clouds. You hold the wheel steady until the weather clears. Most men fail this test because they are more concerned with their own comfort than with the health of the connection. They want the woman to make them feel secure, rather than being the source of security themselves. But if you can master this, if you can understand the psychology of the pullback, you become the kind of man that a woman feels safe building a life with. You become the exception to the rule. In conclusion, I want you to look back at your past relationships, or the one you are in right now. How many times did you walk away because you thought she didn't care, when in reality, she was just terrified? How many times did you push her further away by trying to force her to be normal when she was in the middle of an internal crisis? The truth is that connection is a fragile thing, and the deeper it goes, the more likely it is to trigger our deepest fears. A woman who pulls away isn't always a puzzle to be solved. Sometimes she's just a human being trying to survive the intensity of her own heart. If you can be the man who stays grounded, who stays consistent, and who stays empathetic without losing his own strength, you will find that she doesn't just come back. She comes back with a level of trust and devotion that most men will never experience. It's time to stop playing the game of who cares less and start leading with the strength of someone who knows how to handle the weight of real emotion. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever felt a woman pull back just when things were getting serious? How did you react? And what did you learn from the experience? Share your stories in the comments below. I'll be reading them and offering my perspective where I can. If you found value in this deep dive into female psychology, stay connected with me. I am committed to helping men understand the nuances of emotional intelligence so they can build relationships that are based on truth, not tactics. Let's build something real together. I am here to ensure you have the tools to navigate the most complex parts of the human heart with dignity and clarity. Thank you for your time and for your willingness to grow.